The second over-the-air patch is here. We only have 3 changes this week, down from 4 last week, and they're definitely less impactful on the meta. I'm sure we can all agree the nerfs last week had a huge impact on the meta. This one is just like a nice little push in the right direction, though, for a few underused cards. We have Orka getting a 2 power buff. We have, so it's now 6-11, Luke Cage getting a 1 power buff, it's now a 2-2, and the Collector also getting a 1 power buff at 2-2. I don't think any of these are going to have a huge impact on the meta. In particular, Orka, I still think is going to be a little bit awkward. Luke Cage does open up the potential of playing Luke Cage in Cerebro 2, which we're going to take a look at in a moment. And Collector does have some synergies with Discard, which has been making a bit of a comeback, so we're going to look at a Discard deck with Collector. First up, we have a Toxic Sarah deck. I don't take any credit for this list. This is from Marvel Snap Zone's Silent Performers of the Week. The concept of this one is you're using Luke Cage in Hazmat, as I'm sure you will have seen with Sarah, but Omega Red is the cheeky card to include here to get a bunch of stats in all the lanes as well. So you can play, of course, your Zabu to get a cheap Wong, your Hazmat, your Debris into that lane, and then your Luke Cage can appear to reset all of your cards, and your opponent's going to have a bunch of cards in the negatives. That also means, therefore, that Omega Red could really pop off. Typhoid Mary also got some nice Luke Cage synergy as well. This is going to be the best Luke Cage deck you can play if you want to check it out. I think it looks really solid, and I'm probably going to do a whole video on this deck. Up next, we have Luke Cage Cerebro 2. Not really sure how good Luke Cage will be in Cerebro 2, but if you think about the biggest weaknesses of Cerebro decks, it's often locations where the power changes, and if they're a negative one, like Sewer System, you wouldn't really be able to play anything in there. Well, now you can, because of your Luke Cage, and you can even play your Luke Cage on turn 6 to surprise your opponent. Also, Thanos' Ongoing Stone is no longer going to completely mess up a Cerebro lane. So Luke Cage, a nice safety net into Cerebro 2, but not the most fascinating and spectacular card in this one, but definitely worth a mention. Up next, we have probably the one I'm most excited for out of all of the decks, and that is going to be the Collector Discard deck. There's a bunch of ways you can go about building this one, but unfortunately Dracula is most likely having to get cut, which is controversial. The reason that Dracula probably needs to get cut is because in order for your Collector to get big value, you need to be discarding Swarm a lot, but also the Helicarrier is plus 3 points on the Collector. So if you discard Helicarrier with something like Lady Sif, then, or Modok, then you're going to have a handful of cards, and your Dracula's going to be a little bit less reliable. So is the Collector worth it? Well, maybe not, but if you can discard a bunch of Swarms early on and then Modok them, your Collector can get turbocharged even further, and it's not outrageous to think of a Collector which could play for 7 or 8 points. Now that has some nice synergy with Storm as well, and this deck already has nice synergy with Storm with the Nebula, the Morbius, and also Mystique is the inclusion I'm quite excited about in this one, because the more cards you have in hand to buff your Collector, but it's also more cards to discard for your Morbius, which means your Mystique can also go crazy if you manage to copy Morbius of this. Yeah, of course the big downside though, the lack of Dracula is a bit of a heartbreaker, but I did want to give it a mention nonetheless. Also, Dino Dark Cork with Collector. Collector always used to be included in these decks. Back in beta, Collector, I believe, was 2/2 and buffed by 2 every time you added a card to hand. Of course, it's only buffing by 1, but that means Moon Girl is giving it plus 3. Sentinel gives him plus 1 every time you play a Sentinel. Agent Coulson plus 2 and Agent 13 plus 1. You might not need the Sentinel in this one, and you could replace it for something like a Cosmo to protect your Dino, your Dark Cork from things like Shang-Chi and Enchantress. Cosmo definitely the most obvious inclusion in case you don't need the Sentinel. And finally, I want to give a shout out to an Orca deck by my friend Fresh Lobster. He posted it on his YouTube channel a little while ago. I've never played the card, but this is a deck I'm excited to check out. Again, it's using Omega Red, and the idea with this one is you win the Orca lane. Mr. Fantastic and Claw can help you. You probably don't want to be clawing the Orca lane though, because that's a lot of investment into a single location. But of course you want Orca on its own, so getting points with ongoing abilities into its location with stuff like Omega Red, Claw, Mr. Fantastic. And there's also a cheeky Namor in here as well to try and win another location, of course, with the Mr. Fantastic buffs. And then you've also got Spectrum as well, who, if you don't want to play Orca on turn 6, Spectrum can be buffing up all of your stuff. All right. I think that is the end of the video. That was the deck I stole from Marvel Snap Zone. What do you guys think of the OTA changes overall? I think we can all agree pretty underwhelming. I don't think there's any obvious nerfs which needed to happen, so I can't say I'm too surprised to just see a few cards buffed. Overall, I think it's okay, but nothing really out of the ordinary. Nothing is going to change. I don't think any of these decks are going to be top of the meta or anything even close. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a like and subscribe for more. See you. Bye.